Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Once again, my name is Kevin Kumire. I'll be your moderator for tonight. Welcome to another session of Dialogue with Prof Mandi Rukuni. Tonight, we wrap up the series on religion and spirituality, Which Path for Africa? Tonight's topics will be focusing on the condemnation of African religion by colonization and which way for Africa. Wednesday's session was jam-packed with great questions and contributions from our audience. In order to have a 360 understanding of our topic, we have a guest with us tonight, Pastor Mavhundutse from the Seventh-day Adventist Church. He has been a pastor for 14 years, and he will be giving us his understanding and perspective as a man of the cloth. Pastor Mavhundutse will open up the session with a 20-minute presentation. After that, Prof Mandi Rukuni will share his 30-minute presentation on the topic of the day. I will then open up the floor for 40 minutes to allow contributions and questions. We hope this session will unpack and answer some of the questions which have gone unanswered for many years. After 1 hour, 30 minutes, we will close the Zoom session and migrate the conversation to our WhatsApp and Telegram groups, where you can continue to share your thoughts and ask questions freely. Prof Mandi Rukuni will share his final thoughts of the series via the WhatsApp and Telegram groups. After this session, the Zoom session will be shared on our YouTube channel and on our social media platforms within the next 24 hours. Thank you very much for having everyone tonight. I hand over the platform to Pastor Mavhundutse for his presentation. Over to you, Pastor.
Thank you, our moderator, Mr. Kevin. I appreciate the invitation to be on this platform today and share a few thoughts about what I also understand about the impact of colonialism on African religions. I want to appreciate our Prof Mandi for coming up with this noble idea to have this platform and discuss on very critical matters in our lives. As you have heard, I'm Pastor Mavhundutse. I'm a Christian pastor. So much of my thoughts and insights are informed by my faith. I appreciate what I gathered from the Wednesday discussion. I went through it and I discovered it had very insightful thoughts and very powerful questions and answers. Religion and spirituality, maybe there is a very thin line, according to my understanding, to try and differentiate the two, though maybe there are strong arguments to say they are different. Maybe let me quickly jump in the interest of our time, to look at what colonialism did to African religions, and giving my Christian perspective. Did it really demonize and condemn African religions, colonialism, so that we can have a way forward? I visited a site where I was trying to check on what other people have written about the coming of Christianity and other religions to our mother continent, Africa. And my eyes were caught by these startling remarks from one site, one thread, which said Christianity and colonialism are so closely associated with each other. In other words, you cannot try and separate the two because they came hand in glove. This is because Protestantism and Catholicism, when they sent missionaries to Africa, it's like they were doing that on behalf of their states in terms of the colonialist who was coming behind them. You know, it was like, it was the missionary first, then the colonialists in the heels of the missionary. So the African welcomed this man of cloth to say he has come to give us good news, not knowing that behind him there is someone with a gun to colonize motherland Africa. We cannot dispute the facts that that's how some of these religions came to Africa. And it doesn't mean that there were no religions in Africa. We had our own religion, mainly the African traditional religion with its practices and norms and ways of life. It doesn't mean we were not worshiping, we were worshippers. I remember when I was reading this other book by John Mbiti, which was saying Africans are notoriously religious, which means you cannot try and teach an African about religion. He knows what is religion, and he is very spiritual. So religion in Africa and spirituality were impacted so much by the coming of other religions from the Western countries and the Middle East. But I would want to say on a Christian perspective, the coming of Christianity to Africa may have maybe happened at the same time when colonialism was in the hills following. If I look at Christianity on its own, its construct, its foundation, its ways of moving, by its construct and its DNA, it was bound to come. It doesn't matter how it came, but the foundation on its own, how it was founded, who founded it, his intentions, it was bound to sweep across continents one way or another. So it may have been now the package, how it came, but it was going to come anyhow. As far as I understand, it was going to come. It's unfortunate, though, that it came and colonialism followed, but it was bound to come. I think if you visit your Christian history well, and these other religions like Islam, they impacted even the areas where they sprouted from. Look at Europe. When Christianity was in its prime, when it was being propagated, at one time it became an unwanted religion in Europe, such that we have many martyrs who died because of Christianity in Europe, which means by nature of its foundation, it's so powerful and it has some force. It impacts on communities and societies whenever it comes. It has a way of changing lives. That's why even politicians there in Europe, they would fight against Christianity because it was changing a lot of goalposts for their people. So it also happened when it came to Africa. So you will find that it affected the Africans when it came in terms of their religion. I subscribe to the idea that religion has to do with some groups of people with their practices and teachings, and spirituality may now boil down to individuals on how they try to find life and try to understand who they are, where they came from, and whatever. But on a Christian perspective, it's a bit difficult to differentiate the two and say they are like the East from the West. They are so closely related because one influences the other. You can't be religious and not be spiritual. You can't be spiritual and not be religious. So they are closely linked together. So I will hasten to look at how Africans were impacted when Christianity came. Africans had their own religions, practices, rituals, their own spirituality, how they related to the gods. They also had this question with them to try and ask in their religion, where did we come from? What is our purpose here? Where are we going? How should we reach our destination? Hence, you find there is some teaching in African traditional religion and African religions about origins. They subscribe to gods as having maybe power to create of some sort. Of course, we can call them ancestral spirits or whatever, but that alone tells you that African subscribes to some higher power somewhere, of which it is the same thing which is brought by Christianity, but on a slightly different perspective. But the idea of origins, where did we come from? It's in Christianity, it's there in African traditional religions, it's there. The idea of subscribing to some higher power where we can appeal and get help in terms of maybe we are sick, we want fortunes in life, we are unfortunate in life in terms of relating to misfortunes. The same idea which Christianity is trying to teach in a different dimension, it's found in African religions, as far as I understand. The Christians subscribe to a creator God as taught in the biblical writings. The Africans subscribe also to some creator God, and may differ in their understanding of who this God is, or whether he ever exists in person or in spirit. Christianity, when it came through the missionary, found the African already believing the same idea of a creator deity who lives somewhere. Like in Shona, they will tell you, you see, so they are trying to refer to someone, some higher power somewhere. That's my understanding of where the African was found by these religions when they came. Africans believed in things like setting apart some special days for some gods or deity, where they will not maybe engage into manual labor, go to their fields or hunting and gathering, because they are worshiping somehow, of which is the same thing which is brought by religions like Christianity, where they say, of course, days are the same, but there's some sacredness with some days. So maybe Christianity is coming to people who already believe in these things, but on a different dimension. So I can safely say Christianity did not bring much new things to Africans. Christianity, for example, Christianity upholds some native African practices, values, norms, e.g., we have the sacredness of the marriage vow. Even in African societies, you need to understand that marriage is sacred. You don't just go in it and come out of it willy-nilly. It's sacred, of which is the same thing which these African and these religions like Christianity teach, that marriage is sacred. There's also respect for the elderly, which is taught in the African traditional religions and is also taught in Christianity. The importance of biological family circles is taught in our religions, our traditional religions. that we need to respect our elderly people, give them their place, listen to them, they know better than us. It's the same thing which you read the Christian Bible, it upholds that. So maybe it's just that when the missionary came, the package of his gospel is the one which is unpleasant. Not that he came to demonize Africans and say they are demonic and whatever. I know there are people, when they preach, they are so forceful, especially in Christian circles, when they will try and demonize, you know, some African practices and tell you they are demonic, they are driven by demons and whatnot. But I think there are practices which are very noble, which even God, whom we believe in as Christians, he has no problem with. He has no problem with them. Marriage is upheld in the Christian circles. The issues of days, some days being sacred, is upheld in the Christian circles. It's only that maybe we need as Africans to appreciate that there is something which we didn't know, which came to us. These things we knew, but maybe they are being taught in another way, which we may want now to scrutinize and see whether they are helping us or they are causing us to run away from fundamentals of life. Maybe as I try to draw to a close in the interest of our time, let me try to look into some more contrasts. An African, am I still audible?
Yes, you are, Pastor. We can hear you.
Yes, you are.
Okay, thank you. In terms of spirituality, an African spirituality simply acknowledges that beliefs and practices touch on and inform every facet of human life. That's an African. An African, you cannot separate what he believes from what he practices every day. Actually, his religion and his spirituality is the daily life for an African, which is the same thing with a religion like Christianity. Christianity is taught to be a lifestyle, how you go out, how you relate, how you conduct yourself, how you relate with the supernatural powers. That's exactly what is in African traditional religions. Religions in Africa, they inform almost all the entire sphere of life, be it political, marriage, health, diet, dress, economics, issues like death, what happens after death. The African has always been had these questions with him and needing answers, of which those are the same questions which Christianity is asking and is trying to give answers. Of course, being informed now by the Christians' belief in a creator God who created and began things and ushered them into existence. So it's only that the Christian will tell you, after being informed by his Bible, that we began from such an act of a God who is God the creator. He created us and gave us this, that we can live through it. That's what the African missionary now, I mean the Christian missionary is trying to teach the African, so that the African can improve from the same things he knew. Talk about blood. Africans believe in rituals with the blood. That's the same practice in Christianity. Where there is no blood, there is no forgiveness of sins. In African traditional religions, where there is no blood, you cannot appease your ancestors. So I think that there's just need to be a paradigm shift sit together down, look into these things holistically and objectively to see whether there is any evil that these religions brought per se to us, or they are coming to improve our lives in what we knew already. Guide me, Mr. Moderator, if my time is still okay, so that I will not encroach.
Your time is up, but I'll give you 5 more minutes so that you wrap up.
Okay, let me wrap up. Let me look into the idea which the Christian religion and other religions bring and try to teach in the African circles. Issues like perfection. Are we perfect? Can we say what we have is enough, then we are okay, we don't need anything more? The Christian understanding is man was created perfect, but somewhere along the line, man lost his perfection. And it's shown by now, he's grappling sort of as if in darkness to understand fundamental issues of life. So the Christian now brings a paradigm shift to say you need to understand that there's some imperfection in humanity which was caused by sin. So there's the teaching about sin, sinning, and sinfulness, which the Christian missionary is trying to teach to the African. The African knew that there is sinning, but only that he knew it in a certain way. That's why when they will sit and try to look into issues which happen when people misbehave in the community. So I'm not seeing as if this religion came to demonize Africans, but I see it as coming to improve the way we were running things and conducting ourselves in terms of religion and spirituality. That is my understanding. In closing, Africa today has been highly impacted by these other religions. But like I said earlier, I think we just need as Africans to sit down and look into this. Look at colonialism came, of course, with its ills, which are not very welcome to us as Africans. But it has some things which it brought also, which helps us. Human beings, there is no time we can say now we have reached the ceiling of our lives. Then we don't need anything else to come from anywhere. What we know is enough. So I think as Africans, the way forward is for us to look into what these other religions bring to us and what we have. We try and screen to see if this works and this does not work, and what actually informs our practices is our religion. We cannot be practicing what we don't believe. Thank you. I think that's that I can end here in the interest of our time. May God bless us all as we are continuing in this discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Pastor. I hand over the floor to Professor Mandi for him to give us his presentation. And then after Prof, we open up the floor for a Q&A. Over to you, Prof.
Thank you so much, Kevin. And thank you, Pastor Mavhundutse, for a wonderful reaction to the lecture I gave on Wednesday. And, I think I found your ideas a little bit more enlightened than most Christians. And I think it bodes for a good conversation. So I will start my today's final kind of treatment of this topic from a very personal note, the kind of journey that I've walked myself, so that you can get some sense of why I am thinking in the way that I am thinking. So I have said on Wednesday that there's three perspectives we are looking at the same time. There is the traditional spiritual cultures which existed in most parts of the world before colonization. And then there is the advent of doctrine-driven religions, which were used for colonization. And today we are gravitating worldwide towards a more neutral global consciousness that all this religion and so on is really a diversion. There is a much broader a basis on which we can all relate much more easily and connect to higher energy. So I will, in retrospect, my journey starts when I'm an infant. And when I see my children and my grandchildren, I can see what it is that was happening to me when I was young. Most of the time, being in semi-hypnotic states of consciousness, where they is weaving in and out of the physical and the hypnotic states. And as we know today, science has made this pretty much clear that we are moving between at least four states during the day and night, and when we are fully awake and we're working, we are in the beta wavelength, where the brainwaves are pretty much at higher speed, and then when we're relaxed, we basically in alpha. And then when we go in and out of this semi-hypnotic state, then we're in theta. It's that theta state that most young people are in. And today, a lot of highly spiritual people who are not religious have discovered many ways of meditating and connecting to higher energies without reading any book at all or being converted to any religions. It is there where I am today, but I can recognize that's where I started when I was young. Then I was fortunate enough to, when we go to the religion part, the doctrine religion part, I was lucky in that I went to a church called Dutch Reformed Church, which is one of the most racist and most boring churches of all time. So I was lucky because it told me religion is just neither here or there. It's just one of the key institutions. How can you have, when I was young, I wondered, how can you have, we would drive with my parents into a small little town called Fort Victoria, which is Masvingo today. And then you'll have the whites going to one church and you have the Africans going to another church. And the whites who go to the one church, they're supposed to be Christians. And they are taught in that church that they are superior to blacks, and that the Bible is what gives them the superiority over the blacks. So it already told me, even as a young person, I couldn't challenge my parents, but I later on, by the time I got to boarding school, I was so lucky to go to such a stupid church, which makes it clear that religion is not all that. And as I was young, I also discovered there were these kind of African churches. My eldest father, the eldest brother in my father's family, was a bishop in a Zion Christian church. I was amazed by that church. We were told by my parents that we don't go to that church because that church belongs to people who are uneducated. They don't know what they're doing. But I actually found the church to have a lot more significance to day-to-day lives of people. It was more lively. It was more godly because there was fun, music, dance. It never happened in the Dutch Reformed Church. I mean, you just sat there and felt sorry. It was like a funeral in that Dutch Reformed Church thing. It was just amazingly boring. But after traveling, when I'm now an adult, I'm traveling all over the world, and I'm seeing all different types of societies. So that's probably between the age of 25 to about 35 initially. I now realize that, my goodness me, all cultures have been struggling with these idea. How do you self-respect yourselves as a people, your identity, your culture, and still revere your own heritage and your own idea of who the creator is? That's when I then learned very, very quickly that Christianity on balance was not so great for Africans, and why today, together with other colonial religions, could have done more damage than good. Some good, yes, but more damage than good. So I have moved into the three phases, starting on with what I would call general spirituality, which does not have to be tempered by any form of religion, into doctrine-driven religions, going to boarding school with different types of churches, and then coming out as an adult and an individual, and through a process of self-discovery, searching, and once again, realizing that the spiritual culture of Africans, Unu, Ubuntu, Butu, Udugu in Swahili, that's more powerful than any religion in telling you what being spiritual is. This is being a true human being, respecting everybody, being hospitable to visitors and neighbors and others, brotherhood and sisterhood, and collective sense of responsibility. I tell you, I don't know of any religion which teaches that type of stuff. And that is what we're being told today. We did not understand spirituality. We had to get it from some written book, which is based on histories of people you don't even know. It's coming from very far. Next slide, please. So from spiritual culture to doctrinaire religion is what colonialism did for us. Because when I say spiritual culture, I refer to the understanding of Africans and many other traditional religions, where religion and spirituality are a way of life. They're not a book that you read to understand God. It's a way of life. It's not above the culture of the people. It's not above their identity. It's part of their life. There are many other similar ones. Even some of the religions which go towards really mass, Hinduism and so on, you'll find way of life and not a tool used to colonize people. But analysts suggest something that Pastor Mavhundutse also touched on, and I agree with him, because Africans, because of the spiritual culture, we are incurably spiritual. So what then happened after colonization is that we took the idea of a spiritual culture into a doctrinaire culture, doctrinaire religion culture. So what that produces is a very dangerous mixture of closed minds, fear, rigidity. It's as a matter of history, Pastor Mavhundutse may need a little bit of correction, because it was not the missionaries who came first and then the colonials later. The missionaries, as they were coming, it was not missionaries. It was traders and so on. For hundreds of years, they would come to Africa. In our part of the world here in Zimbabwe and southern, it would be the Portuguese and so on. They never colonized for a long time, and they never forcibly converted anybody to Christianity. In my own family, which is the Rosary Mambo culture, we have more than 400 years of interaction with Christianity. And I can tell you, we were never forced into it. We never accepted it. From the 17th century, no mass conversion of the Moyo clan into Christianity, and yet the Portuguese were here spreading Christianity. So it wasn't until 1884, 85, when the Europeans met in Berlin at the Berlin Conference, and then carved out Africa for themselves using European laws, which say those are not nation states. So any nation state in Europe can go and claim a territory and then have laws which allow you to claim that land. So that is what it made it possible for the different European nations to come to Africa and colonize. And when the British, by the way, then came, I'm now talking about 1890. So from about 18th century, there was no forced Christianity. 1890, when Cecil John Rhodes, the pioneer column, came to Zimbabwe, it was the colonials in front. It was not the missionaries in front. It was the colonials who would come in with the missionaries behind them, because the colonials had to say, this area between Limpopo and Zimbabwe is now British territory. So if you argue, we'll kill you. And then after we subdue you, anyway, you have to convert to our own belief systems. So Christianity was forced. I mean, if you read the history books, you'll see that it was brutal. I mean, if you were a spiritual leader and you argued with them at that time, they chop your head off in front of your family, and then they take your family to their missionary compound and then explain to them for months why they had to chop their father or mother or whatever's head off, because they are evil people, so that those people are converted to Christianity. By the time they are converted, they are thanking the colonials and the missionaries for chopping their own parents' heads off. This is how traumatic this experience was. You have to stop everything. Stop playing bira, stop playing drums, stop ululating. It's all evil. Okay, that's how Christianity was introduced to this day. Now you have really good human beings like Pastor Mavhundutse, who I've never met him physically in life, but I can tell, very nice young man and really means well. But what may be happening here is just not understanding that Christianity at best was a tragedy of good intentions. But at worst, it's forcing people to say there's only one God and you go through Jesus Christ to that God. There's no other way. Now, if Christianity was spiritual, it would not say that. It would say all of us can end up worshiping the same God. We use our own means. You can go through your ancestors. You can use a tree. After all, everything in creation is a God. It is created by God. It is energy from God. So if Christianity came to Africa with the idea that, no, you can continue the way you're continuing, there is no problem. No problem. But the idea even today is to say, if you don't believe that Jesus Christ is the God who created you, what Pastor Mavhundutse calls creator God, Jesus Christ is your creator God. No, now that is obviously a highly contestable thing. I mean, because there are many parts of the world who have not even heard that story, that some individual is the God, everyone else is not a God. I mean, we are all sons and daughters of the creator. So yes, Jesus Christ is a God just as much as I am, and everyone else is part of the creator energy. So this is where Christianity loses it. This rigidity of thinking there's only one way and then we kill you if you don't believe that. So unfortunately, as I go back to the point that Pastor Mavhundutse raised, that Africans are pathologically religious. That is actually what has led to, even today, when you read the literature and research on religion in Africa, you will see how analysts agree with that analysis. And that is why when that really real spiritual energy is captured by a doctrine, it's not different from an army which is told, kill anybody who doesn't agree with you. Name them, call them evil, call them anything. So next slide, please. So I would like to show how spirituality through colonialism paved the way for spiritual fraud. As I've said, for several hundred years, we Africans traded with Europeans with no attempt to force anyone into a Christian religion until the Berlin Conference. So it was only after the Berlin Conference that it was enforced. So this is how spiritual fraud happened, because when the moment that happened, the first thing that happened is the colonials and the missionaries translated the Bible into every African language. Next slide, please. They converted the Bible into all languages, but they never converted anything else into local language. They did not convert science into local language. They did not convert mathematics into local language. Only the Bible. Only the Bible. But the spiritual fraud happened like this. They would then take our name for our God, Mwari, Umkulu Ngulu, Nyadenga, Musikawanu, Modimo, Mulungu, and so on. They take that one and call it a biblical God and then say, in the translated text, the one that you already revered as your God is the same one. The only difference now is Jesus Christ is the one. So this is spiritual fraud, I'm afraid, because Africans, after being traumatized, after being killed, after being told that they are going to continue to be harassed and killed unless they converted to Christianity, they allowed the Bible to steal their idea of the God. It's spiritual fraud. Doctrinaire religions, Christianity and Islam, those were religions created for empires. I mean, the Romans created Christianity 300 years after Jesus died, because they needed a religion to keep their empire together. The Ottoman Empire needed a religion to pull everyone together. Today, in the literature, you see there's more than 4,000 religions in the world, of which the most dominant are the ones which were able to colonize, like Christianity and Islam. But there are others who did not colonize as much, but they're also dominant religions. But you will see that the Abrahamic faiths, which include Christianity, Islam, and Judaism, they kind of worship the same God. And yet over the centuries, they have drifted apart and even fought. And today, in my opinion, they are probably still the most dangerous religions, because I wouldn't be, the chances of Christians and Muslims fighting, causing a third world war is just as high as any other cause of war. This is how bad a doctrine religion is. We are faced with very, very contentious issues. And I'm afraid religion and spirituality are not the same thing. They will share a few ideas like I explained on Wednesday, but hardly the same thing. Next slide, please. Now, if you see what has happened in Africa lately, is this evangelical, charismatic Christianity which has taken over. Once again, analysts and scholars are trying to understand this phenomenon. Well, on balance, once again, there are always some advantages and disadvantages. It's not all bad news. There's some good news, but there's also bad news. The main advantages are that with charismatic evangelism is that this kind of meets contemporary needs of especially young people who, because of westernization and globalization, let's call it, their desires and interpretations of what a modern society is captured in this charismatic evangelism. By translating a kind of interface between modern and pre-modern worlds, this evangelical approach resonates very well with spirituality in Africa. It, however, borrows a lot, like I'll explain a little bit, on the materialism, individualism, and greed from the US version of Puritan Christianity. But on balance, you would say, in some instances, it helps some people to cope in life. It gives them hope where there's no hope, and some social tools to operate in this world. But there are some major disadvantages. The evangelism that we experience in most of Africa today has promoted a type of entrepreneurial capitalism that was borrowed. If you see, and I would like a comment from Pastor Mavhundutse on this one. If you go back to the history of where did this come from, it goes all the way back in the United States to Puritan Christianity, which was promoted at the time that the US also brought a lot of the Europeans in the US to establish a new world, so to speak. And with capitalism growing in leaps and bounds at the time, you find that this Puritan Christianity tried to push the idea of hard work and capitalism, almost like the other African churches in Africa, Mapostories, and so on, who really pushed the idea of hard work. But the problem is that we don't have the same conditions in Africa that existed in the United States at that time, when it was growing in leaps and bounds in terms of economy. Almost every African country is still poor. So the idea of pushing the kind of hard work capitalism of Puritan Christianity has not worked in Africa. So what evangelism has done is, instead of that, they pushed what other people are calling pastorpreneurship, because they are now kind of harmonizing the pre-modern world that resonates with the ancient world of miracles, magic, demons, witchcraft. By doing that, because Africans are already working hard anyway, but economies are not growing. So this twist of taking ancient ideas of miracles, magic, beliefs, which exist in both Christian doctrine and African historical understanding of society, this is where the danger is. This is where the danger is. And then to make matters worse, the evangelism still borrows heavily from the Puritan Christianity in terms of tactic. The tactic is you isolate individual members from their family and friends. You dilute the influence of the family and friends, even to the point of hatred. In Africa, it has worked very well for this evangelism. You find people hating their own families, hating their own parents. They even get married without their parents being present. They hate their own blood. So but by isolating individuals, they then set them up for full-on and often very obscene exploitation, materially and intellectually. This is where the danger is. To really say this is doing good for Africa, I would doubt. I would want to hear how this is doing, how this is helping Africa create a better society. I don't see it. But there is an uneasy relationship between evangelical Christianity and the old school Christian churches. And I could tell from Pastor Mavhundutse's talk that he really borrows quite as much from the old school Christian denominations that have realized over time that Christian religion cannot completely erase African culture. So these older orders have found a way of accepting African identity and cultural issues in ways that the Mafikizolo or Pentecostals just look down upon in very arrogant disapproval. So before I then say, so what's the way for Africa? I want to go to what research has taken place in the world to show the global shift in consciousness that we as Africans are beginning now to be part of. That's why we are even having this conversation. So we need to take a broader view and see what is happening globally, so we open our minds a bit more, so we're not kind of consumed with ourselves. So in a study by Englehart and Norris, Webeck, they looked at 49 countries across the world in a longitudinal study between 1981 and 2019. And they found that there was an increase in religiosity from 1981 to 2007. Then they found that at that time, 1981 to 2007, 33 of the 49 countries were more religious. They became more religious during that period, 1981 to 2007. But later on, there was a sharp reversal of this trend. So between 2007 and 2019, 43 out of the 49 countries became less religious. I want you to see the global trend. From 33 out of 49 between 1981 and 2007, 33 out of 49 countries became more religious. And the more recent trend, 2007 to 2019, 2019, 43 out of 49 became less religious and more spiritual, as you're going to see this explanation. Next slide, please.
See the slide, Prof, because I went to the next slide.
So, thanks. I missed that, sorry. So, between 1981 and 2007, that increase in religiosity occurred in a number of regions of the world, both the former communist countries, but as well as some of the high-income industrialized countries. But the reversal that I talked about happened more across the world rather than in specific pockets. And the authors conclude that both these trends are based on the fact that as society develops and the conditions of people improves and life is more secure and more predictable, then you will find that religiosity diminishes and spirituality grows because there is comfort in numbers. When you are in a poor country where anything can happen to you, you don't even need to know the recourse and so on and so on. It makes sense to be more religious, but when society actually progresses, people become less religious and become more spiritual. This explains partly why Africa remains the only region in the world where this religiosity is actually increasing. We are behind the curve because our economies are not firing, and that we are now prepared to accept some obvious problems and challenges with our religions. I mean, some of the corruption and decadence is so in your face. You say to yourself, why would people accept this level of humiliation by pastors and other religious leaders just because you want to be called a Christian? Really? And just because you want to be seen to be trashing your own identity and culture? Well, that is a poor sense of judgment that I've found, that trashing your own identity and your own culture is not very smart. It's not good branding. Next slide, please. It's not good branding at all, because when you trash yourself, you trash your own brand. It doesn't work for you either. You just be included in the people who should not matter. But people in the world, including Africa, are really seeking more enlightenment or more consciousness, away from a religious dogma of thinking what is written in a book that is 2,000 years old is going to tell you exactly what life is about today. Education, politics is the same. It's not just religion. Too much dogma and less real deep thinking. So collectively, what all these sources of education, politics, and religion are doing is putting fear in people's minds, closing the minds, subtracting them from deeper experience of life. So because fear is very powerful tool when you successfully use it against people, because you can make them do whatever you want. Like today we see pastors make people do crazy things, eat grass. They take the remote control from you, and now they can decide when they want you to scream, when they want you to jump, when they want you to cry, when they want to withdraw some money from your account. They have got the remote control. You gave up the remote control that God gave you so that you run your independent life. You think for yourself. You experience life for yourself. You give it to somebody else. So this is not spirituality, it's religion. This religious dogma is turning people against ourselves, shunning our identities, shunning our cultures. Like I say, so if you think you're shunning, you are trashing your brand, somehow you're going to benefit from it. No, you don't. Because anyone who looks at you, you're still an African, and they say, oh, yeah, that's that crowd. Okay. So the increasingly traumatizing demands that these religions placed on people is just not realistic. Okay. And this sponsoring of new forms of hatred in families, you found people blaming each other. This one has got Chipambo, this one has got that, this one has got demons. This is just amazing that we can accept that kind of obvious flawed thinking in the name of religion. You know, it just does not make sense to me. So there are many issues here that we need as Africans to tackle head on. We need the courage. We need the courage. And, you know, we really have to, I only managed to get the courage because I made a full circle to spirituality. Once I made my full circle to spirituality, I released all the fear or guilt that religions put on me. I am no longer going to compromise myself, my Africanness. I'm not for sale for religion or education or politics. So we need to open these issues up for rational disputation. It's not going to be easy because religion is loaded with fear and emotion. It takes a long time for anybody to be able to tackle issues and discuss them the way we are discussing now. It needs a lot of open minds. But there are some of these issues that we need to talk about include, so which way for Africa? Like I said to you, I'm proposing that religion, fine. The idea that religion, whichever way Christianity was going to make its way to Africa, unfortunately, Pastor, I don't buy that. Why didn't Christianity make its way to Japan or China or Korea? Why? Why didn't it make its way deeply into India? Why Africa? It's not obvious that it was going to make its way here. It only made its way here because the Europeans were ready to overrun Africa and own it. They couldn't do it in China. So the idea that it was going to happen anyway, I don't buy that. Okay. But of the three parts, spiritual culture still is where our African philosophy and worldview is, combining religion and spirituality. That's, to me, less doctrinaire than any form of religion, whether it's Islam or Christianity, because Ubuntu will never, ever tell you that in the name of so and so, I'm going to kill you because you don't believe what I believe. It's always political or business. As we know it, Ubuntu as we know it, has no philosophy that goes that direction. So I think we go back. You see, because the spiritual culture of Africans is on a resurgence. Africans continued to believe in their spiritual culture, although they hide in churches. I mean, even our liberation struggle politically, you had to hide behind religion because that is what the colonials would accept. So if you look at all the liberation struggle movements in Zimbabwe, South Africa, the United States, you know, Martin Luther King, that whole movement, you go into Christianity and hide to fight politics, because once you are in Christianity at that time, the colonizers would accept you better. Then you fight within that. So it was a tactical thing. Okay. If you look at South Africa, South Africa Council of Churches, here we had Bishop Mizorea and many other people whom we found useful at a stage in our liberation struggle to be the ones who could voice these ideas, because the whites would say, oh, these are Christians, so maybe we work with them. Okay, so there's a role. So I'm all for that. It's tactics. So Martin Luther King, Bishop Tutu, and all these, I've absolutely no problem, because that is how we were able to fight for our own liberation. But moving forward, we can't be stuck in an idea that a religion is God, or God is a Christian. God is far from being a Christian. God is just above all that stuff. So another question that we need to ask is, since African spiritual and religious doctrines are beginning to resurge in many parts of Africa, just go on the internet, just look what's happening in the world. People are now beginning to be themselves again and be able to say, wow, It's a search, it's a journey. You will never, ever reach the point where you say, I fully understand it, I've grasped it. That's how life has been crafted. You continually search. But what you, I think, have to run away from, that we have to run away from, is to be told that there's a script you have to read and you can't go outside that script. You must stop thinking. So what that has done for Christians is that their fear of not believing what you are told by the master is much more powerful than actually knowing what it is that you are believing in. You see, that's where the tragedy is. And that level of fear of believing something that obviously has no 100% certainty. But if the colonial had told you, you must believe in your ancestors, you must revere them, you must respect them, the Christians will be telling us that today. But no, they tell you it's evil. So I think that the fact that most Africans are still practicing both some of their spiritual cultures as well as these adopted religions, especially the older religions, which are more tolerant of African cultures, is a good sign. It just means we can open up our minds, we can be less fearful, and go on a proper spiritual search. Do I still have any other slide that I was going to talk about? Yeah. So these are some of the questions I think we need to discuss in other fora. This is the last session. For us, we'll come back maybe after a couple of months on some of these. But why are traditional African religions getting more attention globally? We need to examine that. We also need to talk more about how we harmonize this growing diversity of religions using spiritual doctrines, maybe. Should we teach religion and spirituality in schools? Or this is only for states which are religious states? Should this actually be taught in a republic like Zimbabwe or South Africa? Should we be teaching religion in school, or we go the way that the Europeans and the Americans have gone and say, you don't teach those things in school. It's private. Your belief system is not going to be funded by public resources. So we need to shift awareness of the definition of the creator, or Mwari in our case in Zimbabwe, a shift from a detached, fierce, judgmental, vengeful God that Christians tell us he or she is, to a more joyful, playful, and non-discriminatory kind of participatory creator. Okay, that's how I think the shift should happen, so that we see growing enlightenment from closed minds to open-mindedness. So the other thing that Pastor Mavhundutse talked about is, so Christianity has had impact in Africa. Of course it has had impact. So did colonialism, and so did Islam, so did everything else. So having impact is not the issue, in my opinion, but is our society progressing because of that? In my opinion, it's not, because it's too much focus on materialistic aspects of poverty. In Africa, material poverty is not our biggest problem. It's intellectual poverty and spiritual poverty. Intellectual poverty is bigger and deeper form of poverty, because if you don't rely on your own knowledge system and think you're going to copy and paste somebody else's knowledge system and have an advanced society, you got a problem. Spiritual poverty just means you don't believe in yourself anymore. You think somebody is more human than you, somebody is closer to God than you. Like my Ghanaian friend said during colonial period, you know, you're going to church on Sunday morning, you're in your Sunday best clothes, you meet a white man on the way, you go back home because you've met God right there. You see, that's spiritual poverty. So I've just taken these quotes. You see here that this is Synod O'Connor. That's my feeling. That real God and religion are two different things. And that religion is trying to obscure what God really is. Next one. Learn and how to see, realize that everything connects to everything else. That's Leonardo da Vinci. Fear is the main impediment to experiencing and enjoying life. So worrying won't stop the bad stuff happening to you. It just stops you from actually enjoying the good aspects. Yes. So, like I said on Wednesday, every problem is just an absence of higher thought. It's not a presence of evil, okay, or conditionalities. It's just an invitation to elevate your game, because the hardest experiences are the ones that teach us the most to really enjoy our lives. So spirituality is all this stuff. It's intelligence, not copying and pasting and just following what was written 2,000 years ago. It's awareness, it's consciousness, it's enlightenment, joyfulness, gratitude, love, inner peace and calmness, aligning body, spirit, and the universe to your purpose in life as long as you're still here. So as Stephen Hawking, the most world-renowned physicist, after Einstein said, I don't fear God, I just fear his believers. They are lethal. They will kill you in the name of God, because I'm in the same crowd as Stephen Hawking. I don't fear God at all. I'm part of God and God is part of me. But I fear these believers who go marauding and putting fear in people, trashing them, and sometimes even doing so much damage. So be spiritual, not religious. It's a journey. And I encourage us to enjoy that journey. Thank you very
much. Thank you very much, Prof, for a beautiful presentation. Because of time, I'll open up the floor for discussion and contributions for 20 minutes until 7:30. Unfortunately, the pastor can't connect right now. He's trying to log in, but he can't connect. Hopefully we'll have him back in. But please use the hand reaction button if you want to contribute or ask a question.
Well, pastor's coming back in.
Patrick?
Thank you, Kelvin, for bringing me in. And thank you so very much, Prof. This is awesome, I must say. Awesome presentation, and I appreciate your thoughts and your wealth of knowledge you have shared with us this evening. I have a couple of questions here, but for the sake of time, I just want to drop them in without making much statement. Like you said, the last part of the slides, and which I agree with, that our understanding of God is not static as humans. So it changes. And I think that is what people, I think that's what people are actually having today, particularly in the Western world, and also in the organized religion, that people are making the distinction between spirituality and religion. And like you said, and like I said too on Wednesday, for us Africans, we don't make that distinction. And I see also too that I agree that there's a global consciousness. And also too, but oftentimes when we make this distinction as Africans between spirituality and religion, we are still trying to, I see it from the perspective of why we try to decolonize our minds as Africans. We are using Western paradigms to decolonize our minds. Mm-hmm. So I find that dualism somehow, I don't know what Prof will have to say about that. And also my second point is, if we are condemning doctrinal religion, and I think I want to ask don't we have doctrines also too in African traditional religion? Like because if we say doctrines are rigid, if doctrines are rigid, the concept of Ubuntu in Africa, I think it may be fluid, but Ubuntu cannot be or interpreted in a way that brings in negativity. So I see Ubuntu as a doctrine. So if we are condemning religion based on doctrine, are we talking about rigid doctrine or doctrine at all? My point. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Patrick. Prof, you want to respond with that whilst we're waiting for more questions or contributions?
Okay. I think what Patrick has done is to really take my last, there's this point about global consciousness to a much better level of what you might understanding, because as I said on Wednesday, and I wasn't subscribing to what I said on Wednesday, I was breaking my own rules, that there's no absolute truth on anything in life. You know, it's always relative. So I take Patrick's point about whether Ubuntu Udugu is it doctrine or it's not doctrine. So it's a good point. Definitely, there is elements of religion in African culture. It's just that it's less doctrinaire in a rigid sense. That's what I would say. So it's relatively much less, but there's always something. It's a bit more flexible. But what's allowing, in my opinion, a resurgence of African spiritual culture worldwide is this global consciousness to say, what the heck? So who said this culture is better than that culture? Or this belief system is better than that belief system? Or this religion is better than that religion? It's all rivers just flowing to the same sea. So why give up your identity just because you think the other one is better? All of them, ultimately, they have good and bad. You know, all cultures have good and bad. And all belief systems, at best, is to continue to have an open mind and to search, continue searching. That's where the fun is. And like I said the other day, from a spiritual perspective, you know, the best is still to come. It's in the field of the unknown. You see, religions tend to be afraid of the unknown and darkness and what they see as evil. But spirituality is more comfortable with ambiguity, with the unknown, because in the field of the unknown is where all the new possibilities are. Otherwise, you're stuck with the same old stuff. That's not life. That's why the Creator never put us on this world to continue to revamp history and experience the same thing on a daily basis. We are here to discover new things, to explore, to create new things. We are creators every moment of our lives. Can you imagine? We are looking for God, but you get up every morning and you eat breakfast. You eat whatever you eat. I don't know what you eat. It's all right. A piece of bread or porridge. 4 hours later, you've created a human being. Okay. So isn't that being a creator? Have you ever eaten a piece of bread in the morning and by 10 o'clock, you're a dog or a tree? No, you create a human being. The dog will eat the same piece and it will create a dog. The tree, you throw your trash at the tree, and the tree will take that, convert it into a flower. You know. So the Creator is everywhere. You are creating a human being every moment of your life. So isn't that wonderful? Isn't that something we acknowledge that we are part of the creator. We are the creative force. We just may not be able to explain it scientifically fully, but it's there. But to be told you are not part of God. That one is the man of God. That one is the man of clothes. That one is the one who's close to God. You are not. And yet, on a daily basis, I do the creative stuff. I do everything that God put inside me. And then you tell me I'm not, I'm not a Christian. I'm not religious. That's what I'm objecting to. I'm saying we are all sons and daughters of the creative force. We, including all the animals, stones, everything is all energy that is funneling and connected to the same energy.
Thank you very much, Prof. Abigail?
Thank you, Prof, for a very powerful presentation. I just want to take up the issue of Mataura. These guys came and removed people from their families and taking them their land, which they've taken over, and whether they bought it or not, I don't know. Right now, we have generations and generations of people who have visqua from their families that we are moving you away from Aedenai to come and live with us, where we are nearer to God, etc., etc. Right
Some
now,
of the,
after generations.
Some of the people in the audience don't
Okay.
follow Shona. So let's try and,
When these guys came, they removed people from their families, separated families on the Christian doctrine. That your family is not Christian, they are heathens, whatever they wanted to call them, and they moved these families to their piece of land, which they've taken over. And they've been there now, third, fourth generation of people, of children who were removed from their families. And now this church is on this land, right? And what are the rights of these people sitting on this land, this third, fourth generation? And they're not part of the doctrine, by the way. I come from a family where my grandfather, my paternal grandfather, was one of the first evangelists in the Methodist of Zimbabwe, now the Methodist of Zimbabwe Church, right? He bought a farm and everything else, blah, 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 blah. But when we were growing up, we were made to go to Sunday school every Sunday morning. It was like, it had to be done, right? And in Sunday school, I was made to believe that Jerusalem is in heaven, Canaan is in heaven. All those things brainwashed me. And now I think about it from an issue of land and sustainable livelihoods. What is the plight of these people sitting on the church farms? And these people are no longer following that doctrine. They are now drinking beer, they are doing all sorts of things, but they are the younger generation, third or fourth generation. I would like the pastor to respond to that and tell me exactly what is the future of these generations. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Abigail. Any more questions or contributions? Please use the hand reaction button.
So I think you can respond to Abigail's question. I just muted you.
Sophia?
Okay. Hello?
Hello. Can I contribute?
Yes, you can.
Yes, you can, Sophia. Pastor, sorry, just hold on for Sophia. Thank you.
Yes. Thanks, Prof, for this provoking discussion, and it's a deep one, and I'm not sure whether people are ready for it, especially to really analyze and think deeper. My concern is that these doctrinal religions that we follow, even the way we practice them, when you compare with what's happening now in Europe and even in the United States, you find that they are not even formal the way we have formalized them. For example, I grew up in a Catholic setup, and We have a very strict setup in Zimbabwe about what should be done, what should be followed, and the various issues that we do. Whilst there in Europe, they don't even have enough priests anymore because very few people are still going to church. When you go to church, you find that it's the elderly. You don't find anyone who is less than 35 years. I suppose it's because of what you said, that as society grows and people's needs, the hierarchy of needs continues to grow up, they end up not being fanatical. Maybe we are fanatics about religion because we are still poor. But I think it also affects our analytical ability about how to solve our problems. You hear easy statements that says, God will provide, God will provide, even where you see that one has to work hard for their family, for the family to progress. And now with this arrival of these Pentecostal, the environment is even now more complicated because it's people moving from the traditional churches to the Pentecostal for prosperity gospel, and the mix is even more difficult. So I think this is a discussion that people should engage in, and I wish there were more people on the platform to be able to continue with it. Thank you, Prof.
Thank you very much. Before Pastor Simon comes in, let's have Musonza.
Thank you. I was going to say, I guess one of the big advantages that Christianity per se or any other sort of faith has is that traditionally it's been documented. But out of that same thing, I wanted to ask, how much trouble do we run into when we reduce I'm trying to avoid the word dogma, but when we reduce our faith or our doctrine or the tenets of it to text in the language of today for a people who may live way beyond today and then begin to have squabbles over what that language meant today in the future time that they'll be trying to interpret it. Because that's very obviously the problem that Christianity has today, in that you've got thousands of religions, everybody's reading the same text. It's like a constitution now. And there have been millions of amendments over the thousands of years that it's been in practice. And nobody can seem to agree on what it means, because whoever can stand in a particular court of public opinion and win the most votes establishes his own faith and preaches according to that understanding. So it's like just a constitutional thing open to interpretation. This chapter read with this verse of that book gives us this impression that it's this and the Greek source of this and the other thing. How much trouble do we run into? But then can we avoid setting these things down? And how do we manage for that challenge of potential misinterpretation, distortion, bastardization, and outright misrepresentation as we go forward, as Africans trying to capture this spirituality? And I'm just going to say as quickly as I can. One of the things that I feel that Christianity brought in, intentionally or not, is it undid, or at least its practitioners. I don't want to say Christianity as such, because the people who practice Christianity are not necessarily the definition of what Christianity is, but within the spirituality of Africanness is the connectedness of all things. We never killed for sport or for enjoyment. We never destroyed for recreation. When you chopped a tree, it was for a specific use and purpose. If you killed an animal, it was for a specific use and purpose. And you were not superior to them. You lived in harmony with everything else within your role there. But when you say God gave people dominion, the meaning of that word is so potentially broad that it allows you to then commoditize pretty much everything and make it subject to human judgment, what can be used for what and how, in what quantities, to what end. So it can become commercially exploited to the point of extinction, as we have seen to be the case now in the world. And it's all due to interpretation of a text that was written and then interpreted and then translated and then reconveyed. And we are sitting here today with a book that anybody can interpret in any way they choose, whether it's to defend something that's indefensible in our opinion, or to pull it down. How much trouble do we run to when we reduce our spirituality, our understanding, our insight to text, and then try to ensure that that text remains relevant over generations?
Thank you very much, Msonza. Prof, would you like to respond to those two? And then I will close off the session and you can share your final thoughts in the WhatsApp and Telegram groups. So over to you, Prof.
You know, I think Flora made a good point, some good points. I'm not going to kind of react even to Thomas Msonza's excellent contribution. All I want to say in closing is don't be fooled by what and how I have explained these things as if I am angry and want to reverse the history. That's not my intention.
Sorry, Prof. Please, can you come closer to the microphone? Sorry, I think it's a little bit muffled.
Yes, I'm just saying that although I speak passionately about this topic, it's not out of anger of what history did to us. Because as a spiritualist myself, I don't believe 1 second that I was put on this earth to reverse history. No, I'm put on this earth to create new history. So my intention in bringing this conversation is not to trash or to worry about how we reverse history, but rather, how do we tell ourselves we want to create an advanced African society of which our ancestors created a better society than we are enjoying today. You cannot deny that. They did not have orphans, desperate on the streets, unemployed people. There was no unemployment. There was no destitution. Everybody was taken care of. And people are happy. They left that with us. Even today, when visitors come to Africa, they get surprised that, oh my goodness, these people are poor, but they're still happier than us. We're still happier than the English and the Americans and the Chinese. We are happy people because we are spiritual. So the idea is to open the minds, debate issues that people are afraid of debating, because that's where progress happens. This is where I disagree with religion. Though they tell you don't debate that issue, you don't discuss it. What I'm saying is you are fully entitled from your creator to open up any issue and interrogate it. And you know, even in our African traditions, we revered our ancestors. We loved them and revered them because we know they love us. And there's no doubt in our minds, in our worldview. But when we talk to them, it's not nice thing all the time. We talk about progress. How do we move forward? How do you, you ancestors, you're gone and you're closer to God over there, and we are struggling here with all this stuff. I mean, we want guidance. You're not just seated there, you know, having fun. You have to look after your family. So you can talk to your God, and you can talk to your ancestors the same way you talk to your family. It's a lively conversation intended to build a better progressive society. That's all. And I'm just encouraging us not to be afraid to do that, because the amount of fear generated into us by education and religion and politics is so severe. We see obvious dysfunctionality of education, religion, and Christian and politics, and we just swallow it. And I'm saying, politics with a small p. It's not about party politics. It's not about this type of it's the whole thing we have to question now. If we don't, we are committing what I call cultural suicide. We are giving up our identity and culture for what? Tell me which culture is better than ours. Tell me who understands life better than we do. So why you give up our heritage for? It doesn't matter who you look at, whether it's Americans, the Chinese. We are as good as it comes. We have everything that they enjoy emanated in Africa. We are the human being emanated from Africa. Right here, we created the family structure. We created the hut that we live in after we got out of the cave. We created the blowgun. Everything that you see machine guns today, you see high-rise buildings today, it all started in Africa. It all started here. Civilization started here. So we have no apology to make with quantum physics, proving that we're always right. We always knew that you could do psychic visioning. You could see the past and the future. Those with the capacity to do it, we always knew it, but they came and told us it's witchcraft. But now they teach psychic visioning in their own schools, and they identify it in their kids and they coach them, you see. So everything that we know teleporting, even if it was not physically 100% true that we could time travel, but the fact that we believed it's possible is good enough for me, because now quantum physics is telling us you can teleport. It is possible. The fact that we're not doing it now is not our issue, because in life, the question is not to question what's doable and what's not doable. You cannot say that's not possible, because one day it will be possible. It's not for you to say what's possible and what's not possible. Okay, because who knew that 40 years ago, you could speak to somebody in Australia on a mobile piece of phone in the middle of nowhere? You would have been told you're crazy, that's witchcraft. That's how advanced our ideas were. And our quantum mechanics is proving that we were always spiritually ahead, and we knew many things are possible that the Western world did not believe are possible. And we have to reinvigorate that mind of saying we can actually reinvent our understanding of the world, education system, the whole shebang, the way the economy works, and the future is ours, because Africa is the region now that remains, that is to deliver to the world things that are not there yet. We are the ones who have to show the world how to integrate the world, how we are one human race. Because if the Americans have a president who doesn't even believe that we are all equal, and that we can integrate the world, he wants to build walls all over. So it means that we are already far ahead of them. The fact that they are economically ahead of us does not make them more civilized than us. So I'm not saying just Americans, even here on the African continent, we have systems we have built around us which are not sustainable, which dehumanize us. We just have to go back to our true selves and create a fantastic society for ourselves. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Prof, for that. I now have to close the Zoom session. Our time is up. So I'd like to thank you all for your time and contributions. Thank you to Prof Mandi Rukuni and Pastor Simon for wonderful presentations. Appreciate you guys taking your time off to share your thoughts with us today. Big shout out to the DWP technical team for putting this session together. Please like our Facebook page, Dialogue with Prof Mandi Rukuni. For those on Twitter, follow us at Dialogue with Prof. For those on Instagram, follow us at Prof Mandi Rukuni _. Subscribe to our YouTube channel to get more content that we'll be sharing. Please join us on WhatsApp and Telegram for Prof's final thoughts. And catch you guys next week on the 3rd as we unpack a new topic. Why unemployment is a hoax. Hopefully you guys will join us for that. See you guys. Good night. Have a great weekend.